Let us pray. Holy God, hear these words and make them yours. Move your Spirit among us, that we might hear your voice this day and your message for all of us this morning. We pray in your Son's name, amen. How did you get your name? It's a common question that is often asked, especially during icebreakers, when groups are gathering together. And many of us, not all of us, but many of us have some sort of story to tell, whether it's long or short. My oldest, for instance, is named after a prayer that is found on a statue where I went to college. I am named after my father, my middle name, and my grandfather, my first name, or at least I was supposed to be. It didn't quite work out that way. It's a funny story. You should ask it sometime. It really is.
You should ask his mom.
You shouldn't ask my mom. That's not fair. Many of us have these stories, humorous or not. We know how and why we got our name. This morning's text from Genesis is about how Isaac, the son of Abraham, and the father, Jacob, gets his name. And it begins a lectionary journey through the patriarchal and matriarchal stories of Israel that will last for several months. We'll be on this journey in lectionary until October. I'm not sure how often we will preach on that, but we'll check in occasionally because they're good and important stories. And this journey begins here with the birth and the naming of Isaac. Or sort of does. Because, of course, Abraham's story starts quite a bit before this, back when the happy couple were not called Abraham and Sarah, but Abram and Sarai. Many of you know that story already. Abram is called by God to move from the land of Ur, where he was, to the land of Canaan, and promised that he will be the father of many nations, which is quite the promise for God to make, because at that time his wife Sarai was barren. They had no children. But Abram believes God, and as the writers of the book of Hebrews would say thousands of years later, that belief is given to him as righteousness. Abram packs up his possessions, his wife, and his nephew Lot, and heads off to a new land, to a new home, and lands in the land of Canaan, though not without a few bumps along the road. You see, this promise, this move, happens in chapter 12, and the first part of our reading this morning happens in chapter 18, and Isaac's not born until chapter 21. That's a lot of reading between the promise and the birth. That's a lot of time of waiting and hoping and wondering if God's promises are trustworthy and true. And we need to understand and even sit in this period of waiting, because otherwise we cannot fully understand why Sarah laughs. Sarah laughs. Abraham, by the way, laughs a couple of chapters previous. Not in this passage, but he too laughs at such an absurd promise. Sarah laughs. God promises again that Abraham will have a son by her, not through her maidservant Hagar, and more about her next week. God promises that Sarah, who has gone through menopause, by the way, the text does the most euphemistic phrases ever. It has ceased to be with her above the way of women. That's menopause. That's what it is. The text just tells it in a really weird way. Sarah's gone through menopause, and yet God says, you're going to get pregnant. This is logically impossible. It's ridiculous. It's a crazy idea that simply cannot happen. So Sarah laughs. She laughs because the whole idea is funny. She laughs because there's no way it could possibly be true. She laughs because despite the promise that Abraham would be the ancestor of many, 6 chapters ago. She still hasn't gotten promise. And the idea that this time it will happen is ridiculous. So she laughs. She laughs because otherwise she might just weep. Because here's the thing. This story, as happy as it is, as joyous as it is, as much as it makes us smile, we want to tell it. I love telling this story. It's also a story about sorrow. It is about Sarah and Abraham trying for years and years to have a child with no success. It's about a woman who had no children, who had no sons, in a day and age where bearing sons, where bearing children was considered the primary measure of a woman's worth, where your fertility was as important to your husband in most cases as anything else about you. This is a story about a woman who likely had to endure years and years of painful taunts and just as painful well-wishes, who desired to be a mother so much that she gave her maid to her husband in hopes that the maid might bear her husband a son. Again, more on that next week. A woman who at long last felt menopause come upon her, felt all of her hopes fade away. This story is one of sorrow and grief as much as one of joy. That grief is what caused Sarah to laugh. Sarah, who was born the hurtful laugh of mocking, the hurtful taunts of those who did not consider her to be enough, has to laugh, because otherwise the pain would be too great. Let me be clear. Part of the tragedy of this story is that Sarah's self-worth was wrapped up in her fertility. That was the way of the world in which she lived, but it was not then, nor is it now the way God desires the world to be. God saw Sarah's worth as much more than her ability to bear Isaac. And I believe God was with her in every one of those moments of pain that she felt. Just as God is with women and men today who are struggling with fertility issues. This is not the crux of the passage, but it's an important point that I want to make sure we hear. Even in the midst of fertility issues and struggles and pain, God is present. Just as God was present with Abraham and Sarah, so God is with those of us who have those struggles today. So friends, if that is you, know this: God is with you. And God says you are enough. Friends, this is a story that includes pain and hurt. But the story is not just about the pain. It's also about the joy. For God does keep the promises that had been made. And as strange as that promise was, as ridiculous and laughable as it was to imagine Sarah getting pregnant post-menopause, she does. Abraham and Sarah in chapter 21, 9 chapters after Abraham is called, have a son. And they name him Isaac. And the text doesn't say it, it's actually in a footnote. But just so you know, Isaac means he who laughs. Yes, this is how Isaac gets his name. He gets his name from the laughter of his mother and father. Because that laughter has been turned around. The laughter of taunts and jeers, of minimizing and pain, has become a laughter of joy. The laughter of joy of a newborn child. And this is a laughter that all can join in with Sarah and Abraham in. For no longer are people laughing at this couple. They are now laughing with them at the great and glorious joke told by God. A joke that has transformed their mourning into laughter, that has brought new life into a place where new life seemed impossible. For with God all things are possible. For God is the one whose promise can be trusted, and who can bring new life even in moments that feel full of death, can bring hope into moments that feel hopeless. Friends, that's the main message I wish you to hear this morning. That God comes into places that feel strange and hard and lifeless, and breathes in life, breathes in hope. I don't know where you are on your journeys. I don't know if you're in a place of pure joy and laughter, like chapter 21, or if you're in a different place, like all of those chapters in between. But I know this. Our God is one who can turn the laughter of jeering and the pain of loss into the laughter of blessing, into new life. Our God is the one who walks with us through this time of COVID-19 isolation into a day where we begin to see a new light. And toward that day where we can all be together again. By the way, in this example, we're not yet at chapter 21. We're not yet at the birth of Isaac. We've not yet reached that day of laughter, even though some of us are here today. That day, we can all laugh together, is still to come. But the story promises us it will come, just as Isaac did come. This new life of laughter and joy may not look like what we imagine it might look like. And it might be a joy that's still tinged with the sorrows that often come in this life. But friends, when God gets involved, new life is sure to follow. New life in all of its blessed variety and joy. New life in all of its laughter. And our names will become those who laugh with joy. This passage is not truly the beginning of Abraham's story, and it's certainly not to the end. But it is a moment. It is a moment where the promise of new life is made manifest, where the reality of a God who keeps promises is given and shown, and where joy is as abundant as laughter. Friends, some days we'll have that joy. Some days, like so many days that Sarah had in her life, we'll have sorrow and pain. But through them all will be the God who walked with Abraham and Sarah, who walks with us still. The God who leads us to places of new life and new laughter. The God who in our sorrow weeps with us. The God who in our joy laughs with us. God, too, is Isaac, he who laughs. Thanks be to God. Amen.